Hello and welcome to another NihongoGamer video. As you know, I'm a massive fan of arcade sticks on this channel. I love to play fighting games, move my character around with this lever here and press the buttons here to do the attack. But also I have been recently trying out alternative controllers, things like these, which don't have a lever. Instead you press buttons to do left, right, down, and jump. But up until now, if you didn't build yourself a controller, there were very few options. Well, here comes a new challenger. Now, full disclaimer, I just received this from Paradise Arcade. It's the MPress. It's a brand new product that they've just made, which is very similar to something like this because it's a button box controller, or an all buttons controller. But it features a new manufacturing process, which allows this controller to be significantly smaller, slimmer, and in many ways, it's kind of an interesting take on the ergonomics of a controller like this. Let's just rip open the packaging here, just slide it. Oh, it's a box in a box. Whoa, whoa! It's just padding. You know, it's kind of exciting because the first box makes you think, okay, maybe the controller's not as small as I thought it was going to be. And then you open the next box, it's like, oh wow, it keeps getting smaller. Maybe inside this box will be another box. Open it up. Woo! It's some bubble wrap. Ooh, look at all these stickers. This looks like a new logo. The MPress explains how the controller layout's going to work. But let's go and see the actual controller itself. It is actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller until finally we have this slim exterior that we can slide it out of. Da, 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 da. Wow! This is significantly nicer than I thought it was gonna be. From the images that I saw on Twitter and all that, it looks like a fairly simple slab of acrylic, but when you actually get a good look at it, it's been machined, so it's got these nice beveled edges. It is a fairly weighty feeling controller. Look at this thing, this is space age. You know, I thought I was gonna get it out and go, okay, it's a slab of acrylic with some buttons on it. But when you get close to it, it is significantly more than that. It has a real aura to it, and I'll explain why. Can you see the way the light is refracting? Every time you look at it from a slightly different angle, it seems to like refract the light at a slightly different speed and angle, and you just see things from a different way. Like if you hold it just here, you can see the buttons all the way down here, but they've also like refracted so that you can kind of see them right here. And this is all before I've even put artwork into this controller, but you could actually slide in your own artwork and make a completely customized controller. Direction buttons on the side, you've got the action buttons on the other side, and your options type share buttons here along the top. And just to be really slick, the PCB, which is doing all of the brain work, is actually nice and visible right here. You can see exactly how each button links up to the PCB, and these are actual electrical traces. But what you really want to see, I know, is from the side. Check this out. This is significantly thinner than any other arcade stick I have tried before, and it's because of the fairly kind of brand new sort of way to manufacture these controllers. And as you can see, the PCB controlling this controller is only this, like it's like 1 or 2 millimeters of electrical component here. The rest of it is just this thick acrylic here and this thick acrylic here. I'll just spin it around here so you can see this is it from the side, this is it from the front, and actually look at the connections here. It's got a USB-C port, which is nice because it'll be reversible. I believe this is a tournament switch to prevent you from accidentally pressing the options button while you're playing. Spin it around to the other side and you can just get a good look at the Brook PCB, which is controlling all of the signals. And then coming back to the front of the controller and the back. If you want to have a nice cool design on the back of your controller to match the front of the controller, which is quite unusual. You don't see a lot of that with arcade sticks. I mean, mostly because most arcade sticks are so big that you're not really flipping them over that often. But this controller, look, this is so slim that you'd be flipping this over as easily as you'd be flipping an iPad. Talking of which, where's my iPad? Check this out. It is basically the same size. It's the same size and dimensions as an iPad Pro, and they are basically the same size. That's insane. Obviously not as slim. All right, so there's a lot to say about this controller, but the main thing I'm really interested to see is how the thinness, the slimness of this controller is going to affect the way it feels when I'm playing it. As you can see, I actually sliced off a good 2 centimeters of this controller. I wanted it to be as low as possible because when I was playing with this controller, I found that like the higher the controller was like this, the higher the angle of my wrist ended up like this, and it started to hurt so important to have good ergonomics because it feels like you're typing on a keyboard, but you're doing something very different to what you would do on a keyboard. On a keyboard, you don't normally like hold down a button while pressing all the other buttons. And one of the main things I found that I'm doing with a button box controller like this is I'm holding down back. Blocking is an important concept in fighting games, which is why I'm very curious to see how this helps with ergonomics. I don't want to rely entirely on the strength of the muscle in my finger. I want to take advantage of the weight of my arm, the position of my hand, and also just make sure that I have as little pain as possible because I want to play fighting games for as long as possible. Let's check out the buttons. Oh, okay. That's a very solid tap. It's got a significant tap to it. Just for comparison, if I get out a stick like this, these are Sanwa buttons on a Quanba drone. Whoa, okay, that's significantly, I forgot how loud these controllers are. By comparison, here's the MPress. It's a much more muted sound. It's louder, of course, than the gamer finger buttons that I put in here. Buttons like gamer fingers are very, very quiet, even if I slam them. These are not as quiet as that, but they're not high pitch and they're not very broadband. They're very kind of like muted, low pitch, low frequency. I believe they're using MX buttons, which are like a button which is made by Paradise Arcade. So I feel like one of the main reasons they chose to use their own buttons was to control just how low profile these buttons are. And they're nice and low profile, and I think because of the manufacturing process, if you used other buttons from other manufacturers, I think they'd be limited on how low profile they could make them. But I'm not exactly sure what the throw is on these switches, but if you just have a good look at this, you can kind of see. One of the other main things that I completely forgot about this controller is that every button on this controller is a 30mm button. And the reason that's significant is that before, if you wanted to have a nice layout like this, you needed to use 24mm buttons. The reason was the buttons surround. Even though the button itself is like a 22 or 23mm thing, the surround is actually a little bit bigger. And so if you use 30mm buttons, you'd have it like spread out like this, and it kind of hurts. Well, I think there are some people with larger hands who prefer that layout, but personally, I liked the feel. It was just perfect for my hands to have these 24mm buttons like this. By eliminating button surrounds, they can actually have these 30mm buttons like as close to each other as they want, as long as they don't interfere with each other. Now, I asked them to put clear buttons at the top, white buttons on the left, and black buttons on the right, but you can actually customize this pretty much any way you want. You can get pretty much any switches you want. You get any color of buttons that you want, and you can have them in any arrangement pretty much that I want. Alright, it's all well and good that the controller looks cool and has all the cool features that we think we want, but the main question is, when you go to a tournament and you have to put this thing on your lap and play with it, how's it gonna feel? So let's go ahead and put it on our lap. Here I've got my camera set up. It's on my lap now. So one of the main things that changes when you go from a large arcade stick to a small, slim profile stick like this is, one, obviously I'm at a very nice, oh, this is a lovely position for my arms. Huh, I like it. They've got a real flat feel to these buttons. They're very, instead of being like super convex on top, they're very, very flat. Huh, it's interesting. I don't know, I feel like this has got a slightly more concaveness to it. This controller's got a very, very flat feel to it. Whoa. But one thing that may concern you is like, is it going to fall through your legs because it is significantly smaller a form factor than other sticks. This is what my legs look like when they're going like directly forwards out like this, and on my lap, it's not going anywhere. If I open my legs out like more like this, I can still have it in my lap, but it's starting to fall like this. So if I want it to be stable, I don't want to have my legs any further than maybe this much. I think this is a reasonable distance to have my legs spread apart, but it won't fall out if I've got my legs like this. If I go any further, it will start to fall. And obviously, if you play with your legs together like this, you've got absolutely no problem. It sounds like they're planning on having some swivel expanders that will like flip out like this. This is such a nice balance of size because it's not super long, so it doesn't, it's gonna be easy to carry around in your bag, but it's also long enough that my legs don't have to be completely closed together in order to use it. But the main thing I'm really liking is the slimness of this controller. Apparently this is less than 1 inch thick. On the DIY button box that I created like this, it was actually this high when I first built it, and so my hands were like this when I was playing. And obviously this is exaggerating, it wasn't this bad, but it was like this. And then I sliced off the base of the controller so that it would be a little bit lower. I felt like this is pretty good, but I always wanted it to be even slimmer. And check this out. So bringing over the MPress, now if I put this on my lap, look how unbelievably low profile that is. And then my arm coming straight down, straight forward, and like that. Wow, that is actually insane. And just lifting my hands up, even if I have my hands hovering over the controller, you can see I've got a nice right angle like this. Unbelievable. The only way to have your arms at a complete perfect right angle would be to have a controller made out of a piece of paper, which, who knows, maybe in the future that will be possible. But right now, at the less than 1 inch thick MPress, and I am very impressed right now, I got a super comfortable position. But the main, the real test, we need to actually plug it in to the games so that we can actually see how it feels to try the MPress in some fighting games. So let's try it out right now. You get actually quite a long cable. If we do the old throw test, Goodwill Hunting. Or wait, it's a river runs through it, isn't it? Juts out quite a lot. I think I would feel a little bit nervous about this in a future design version of this controller. I think it would be cool if this were countersunk, or if there was some way to feel like this part of the control, the cable wasn't exposed. My laptop bag, it's only really designed to hold things like MacBook Air. We're going to see if it will fit the MPress. Oh, perfect. Now you can hold your arcade stick in a bag which is so slim you can't even tell that the person is wearing a bag. This is the main bag compartment. If I just take it out of here, can we just slide it into sort of the accessories pocket in the front of the bag? It fits into the accessory compartment of my bag. Let's go ahead and try out this controller. So you can see I've got the MPress plugged in, pressing right and left, pressing down, pressing jump, all of the SOCD shortcuts that you know. If you double tap back, you can do your little dashes. Jumping, doing some combos, do some throws. The buttons are so close to the surface. Like if you are resting your fingers on these buttons and you just slide right off a little bit, like 2 millimeters or less than like 2 millimeters away, you are already touching the surface of the controller. So what's really weird is being able to like rest my hands on the controller, but then like my pinky, I feel like I'm right there on the controller as well. All right, okay. It's not actually as loud as I thought it was going to be. I was under the impression that this was going to be a really loud controller, but nothing will ever really be quite as loud as like Sanwa's hitting like aircraft aluminium, like really hard metal. This is plastic on plastic. It sounds like plastic on plastic, and I would say it's about the same loudness as tapping on a gaming keyboard like this. What's really cool is that it also feels like a gaming keyboard. Something I like about gamer finger buttons is that they're really, really quiet and also really, really soft, but you also get slightly less tactility. I'll tell you what, this feels really nice, like I'm playing on a game, like on a gaming keyboard. I feel so much more like I'm playing on a keyboard, which is cool, but also just kind of strange. Important things are pressing these buttons doesn't hurt my hands. And it also doesn't hurt my ears. Now, I'm wearing headphones at the moment, but even if I take my headphones off, I was just trying it earlier. Like, I think this is a very reasonable level of sound. I'll put my mic as close as I can to the buttons. It has a real keyboard click sound to it. Not like the clicky, mechanical blue switches, but it does have a mechanical thunk to it. I'm really impressed. I did not think I was going to like this as much as I am, actually. And as I suspected, even though I've only been playing it for about 5 minutes now, I am really liking this arm position, and I'm able to like hover just a couple millimeters above the buttons and use my natural arm movements to really get a good feel for playing this game. It is so cool to have a slim button box controller. I like it. It's working out absolutely fine. Interesting that they've gone for a sort of Vuelix layout as opposed to having it come a little bit closer. You can see that there is a slight curve over here, and so my hands are kind of my pinky's kind of right here in the middle, and I feel like with this slightly more Vuelix style layout. I'm noticing that this button here is a little bit higher than I'm used to, but obviously this is just something you get used to. This isn't a flaw of the controller. It's not something you can't get used to. When I was using this DIY button box controller that I had here, it was significantly higher up, and so my hands were a little bit more like this, and so I was tempted to rest my hands down again so that my hands were like resting on the palm rest of the controller. But I feel like something that's happened naturally by switching over to this lower profile controller is that just naturally, even if I rest my hands on the thing, I would actually have to like make an effort to leave my palms on the controller. So in a way, having the slimmer profile of this controller, it's actually kind of encouraging me to leave my hands in this more natural position as opposed to this. Basically, if you lock your wrists in this position, and I've tried it over months and just I've tried different positions, it does really hurt your forearms. I'm gonna be really honest with you right now. I'm like searching quite hard for things to dislike about this controller, but I'm not I'm not really finding anything that I can specifically point out that I dislike, apart from just this USB cable. I guess if you want to really nitpick about the controller, you could say it would be nicer if it were like traditional controllers where you could actually hot swap any buttons you want. If you go for a slimline controller like this, you accept that in order to get such low profile buttons, in order to get this super small package and this slim design, you have to give up the ability to swap in your own button caps. Like they've made this, it's like the ability to get this low profile is they've used their own button caps and they know how to get it as low as possible. But if you accept the fact that maybe customizability moves into other places, like now you can customize the artwork on the front, you can also customize the artwork on the back of the controller, you can completely customize whether you have clear buttons or colorful buttons, you can tell them what Cherry MX switches you want in here. In fact, if you choose the, I believe it's like a $20 upgrade, you can, instead of getting Cherry MXs, which are built into the controller, you can get hot swap switches, which means that you could actually just go and buy your own Kale mechanical switches, pop these out and put your own switches in, and that's like a $20 upgrade. When you first use this controller, the first thing that I'm finding, which is a little bit difficult for me to get used to, is that I usually use the button surrounds. I use the gaps in between the buttons to feel where I am on the controller. I'm just used to feeling these gaps down here. The MPress does have its own gaps as well, but the gaps are in different places. Like I don't have button surrounds, I just have the acrylic here. Here's how I feel about double tapping. Yes, you can double tap on this controller, and I'm not a master of double tapping, so maybe other people are better at this, but I think something that may happen when you first come to a controller like this, because there are no button surrounds and these 30mm buttons are so close together, you may accidentally like try to double tap this and accidentally end up pressing some buttons that are nearby. You definitely don't have as much of a gap in between the buttons to prevent yourself from pressing the other buttons when you double tap. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but you do notice it. You do notice, like when I do a double tap like this, I do feel like naturally, just the way that I've learned how to double tap, like my fingers just kind of graze the area around the button. And on a controller that had button surrounds, I'd be less likely to press these buttons that are close by. You may have to like change your technique a little bit or be a little more careful. All right, let's try some other games. All right, it's been a while. Haven't played this game for a while. It's Them's Fightin' Herds. This does have a couple sort of instant air dashing things. There's an instant air dash combo. Okay. What I'm really trying is seeing over time, do my fingers hurt and how much do I like the actual feel and sound of this controller? Because again, I have got my headphones on, but I've been trying it with the headphones off, but really it's the feel that I'm really interested in, the feel of this controller, because I feel like this is probably the closest I've got to feeling like I'm playing on an actual like a computer keyboard. I feel like the combination of the plastic used for the buttons and the plastic used for the controller and the acrylic material of the controller itself all comes together for quite a unique feel, which is very close to playing on a keyboard that doesn't hurt your hands. Alright, and no arcade controller test could be complete without a test of Undenied In-Birth, because I will shill this game forever. Feels pretty good. I feel like if you are the type of person that feels like you do want to rest your palms on it, you do have the palm rest there. Maybe you're the type of person who can. I feel like there are some people who like build controllers as well, and they think it's totally fine to like rest their palms on the controller. Personally, I can't play like that, so I like that it's nice and low profile, and I've got myself in this, what I feel is like almost like the ideal ergonomic position to have it this low and to have my arms at exactly this angle. This is feeling really, really ideal. I actually sawed off the base of this controller because I wanted to bring it as close to my body as possible. And what you'll find is that depending on your body shape and size, maybe a controller that's this thick, like this, got this much thickness, you can only bring it to as close, like, you know, so you can only bring it so close to your body. What I've noticed about this controller is that even if I wanted to bring it right up against my body like this, I totally can. And the reason is because there's no thickness to it. If it were thicker, I'd feel like there's a limit to how close I could get to it. Things that I wasn't 100% sure about the controller when I just saw it in pictures are really becoming clear now that I've got it in my hands and I'm actually able to try it. I like it. One of the great memes on this channel is all over the bottom. And as you can see, there's something that is not all over the bottom of this controller. It does not have non-slip padding. And at first I was a little concerned about that. I was like, acrylic? That's going to be super slippery. It's going to fall off my lap. But as you can see, I have had no issues with that. And the main reason why it's not an issue is because on these button box controllers, you're not moving a lever left and right. You'd be like left, right, left, right, left, right. And that actually shakes, that's lateral motion. That's why it's so important on things like a traditional arcade stick. But as you can see on a button box controller, it's all motion just going straight up and down. And so I'm like pushing on these keys like this, and the controller is never slipping around because there's basically no movements, you know, from gameplay that would cause the controller to slide left and right. It's actually kind of grippy. It's not textured. Maybe it's because it's a hot day or something, but I'm finding it is not actually a very slippery surface. Apparently this is a 4-pound controller, so I don't know if that's heavy or not. This is a good amount of weight to prevent the controller from like sliding off my lap. I haven't tried this yet. I just want to try this tournament switch. Slick this on, and I've got my buttons here, but excellent. So the tournament switch actually does switch off all of this upper row of buttons. So if you've got shortcuts set to L3 and R3, which I imagine you're not really doing. There are probably some players out there that have techniques where they're, you know, doing their combo and then they also reach over here to press L3 and R3. That won't work when you're in tournament mode. You'll have to make sure that tournament mode is switched off. Alright, so there you have it. That was my unboxing and test of the MPress arcade stick by Paradise Arcade. Here are my first impressions of this controller. It is not as loud as I thought it was going to be. If you want to compare. Actually, I kind of prefer the sound of this because it's got a lower frequency, and the tappy buttons of a gaming keyboard are sort of higher in frequency. With an arcade controller, you're more likely to be, especially with a button box controller, you're more likely to be like hovering over the buttons than coming down on the buttons like this. So it is likely to be maybe a little bit louder than you expect, but I actually like the volume level of this controller. I think it's very, very reasonable. And as you saw, it's actually quieter than just a standard arcade stick. This is actually just a standard Quanba drone. It's actually really loud. In terms of feel, I also really like that it feels so much like a keyboard. Something to do with the combination of the plastic of the buttons, the plastics of the acrylic, and the key switches that they've chosen to put in here, which are Cherry MX. But you can also pay like $20 extra and get the Kale Hot Swap upgrade. In terms of design, I'm actually very happy with this. I wouldn't want this controller to be any wider than it is. I think it would be kind of cool if they do come up with the lap expander, but personally, I don't think I would even buy it because I don't think I would ever like widen my stance when playing to need like a lap extension. But they are thinking about it for people who like to have their legs wide open when they play. In addition to the fact that the acrylic doesn't seem to be too slippery, it also is a very hefty piece of hardware. Like, this is 4 pounds and it is not going anywhere. If I put it on my hand like this, look, I like this is maybe it's because it's a hot day, I'm not sure, but I'm giving this quite a good smack and it is not sliding out of my hand. In terms of the button layout, I'm very happy with this button layout. One of the main features of this stick really is that they're able to use 30mm buttons, but have them as closely packed in as other button box controllers that would normally need like 24mm buttons. That's one of the main things. One thing I do think is worth considering is when you try it, do consider like how much do you like need space around your buttons, because if you're the type of person that you double tap and you like to have loads of extra room in between the buttons, then, you know, when you double tap on this one, you might find that you like double tap and then like you graze the other buttons nearer to it. Look at how customizable this would be. Like, there's so much acrylic. It really reminds me of the Ampeg. Dave Grohl, he uses it in a lot of his music videos. If you're a fan of that transparent acrylic guitar, you would probably really like this. Look how customizable this is going to be in terms of personalization. And even if you don't put some artwork in here, you can just choose different boards. What I really would like to have is one of the, I've seen other designs where there's like a red board with gold buttons. Like, that looks pretty cool. You can fit it into a tiny little bag like this, and even you can fit it into the side pocket. It's that small. And although I'm a big fan of everything I've seen so far, there are a couple things that I think I would change in a future revision of this controller. The one thing that I really want to change about this controller is the USB port. I didn't have any issues with it personally, and it probably is more resilient than I think. But can you see, because it's jutting out like this, can you see that it's connected to the PCB itself directly? Visually, what I'd like to see is for the cable to just come out the top of the controller like this and not have the actual plug part jutting out like this. I think certain things that would be nice for like a very, very casual consumer perspective is like, what do these buttons do? And although I've got this guide here telling you what they do, it's very difficult to see. There's like a little gap between the red of the Cherry MX switch and the edge of this button. Select, start. So as you can see, it's kind of at enthusiast consumer level as opposed to straight up consumer level, but that's fine. I think for this stage of the controller, that's totally where it needs to be, as while it finds its feet and figures out really what it wants to be. I'm very, very impressed with the state of the controller right now. I'm very happy to just use this as my main controller, but we shall see. And if you would like to know how I'm getting on with this controller, do check out future live streams and future videos coming up where I will update you with my opinions, because remember, it's day one. I've literally just got it out of the box and tried it today, but so far, so good. I'm enjoying it a lot. To see how my impressions unfold over time with this controller after I've played with it for more than one day or half a day, then do check out the Twitch streams. You can follow me for free over there. You can subscribe to me here on YouTube for free as well if you want to watch those streams. The notifications, I sometimes put them up on Twitter, and there's also a Discord where we can talk about gear and you can ask extra questions, things that maybe I don't have time to answer in the comments here. Links to everything are in the description box below. If you're interested to know more about this controller, check out MPress by Paradise Arcade on their official website. That's all for now. Don't forget to leave a comment and let me know, are you interested in slimline acrylic ultra personalizable controllers like this? Because I'm gonna be honest, I'm so excited to see other competitors in this form factor. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll see you all in the next NihongoGamer video.